Good morning, uh, or should I say good afternoon? It's already past noon. Had a long a day yesterday, afternoon and night, and this morning reading all about attachment theory and reading further into Schneider's book, Rediscovery of Awe, uh, to be able to talk about attachment and extremism today. Um, I'm Denis Murray, and this is Popcast 38, called Yet More on Rediscovery of Awe. So I have to say, I'm getting a little shaggy, and I just found out that I can get a haircut tomorrow. It's uh, it's okay under the new rules, so I'm gonna be a little less shaggy. And I might even shave. And I did put on my nice pink shirt because it's a gorgeous spring day here, and it's all good. I learned something this morning preparing for this podcast that really makes for a fabulous day. It's a wonderful thing to learn limitations and faults and failure to appreciate things. And it makes you a little better off. So, reading this book, particularly about attachment and extremism, uh, led me to realize that what he's talking about is essentially a type bias. He's saying that there are good points and bad points to attachment, but essentially he's comparing, and he discusses attachment in some detail. Um, and I've done a lot of other reading about attachment theory, etc. So I'm kind of comfortable about the attachment part. But what he's really doing is saying that on the one hand, we have a person who is has his attachments in balance, and on the other hand, we have a person whose attachments are too controlling and too one-sided. Um, and the more I read about his description, the more I realized that there's a type bias here. You remember we've talked about psychological type, and I have, as far as I know, an original thinker on this matter. I have seen type differences as a mechanism that tends to make us draw towards each other. I see it as a resource that I see it as a series of psychological skills that we don't all have fully developed. And typically we only have one fully developed and the rest are somewhat developed. But as a result, in order to get the benefit of the others in a fully developed form, we tend to form groups in family and at work. And such groups are benefiting from this extra high level of skill in these various psychological skills. Um, and we therefore thrive as a people. And we evolved the psychology that includes the psychological skills and our tendency to have one highly developed and the rest less so, so that we're, by this tendency, led towards each other. Well, um, as I realized what he's describing here about the person that he compares to the conventionally religious, the person whose attachments are balanced compared to the person whose attachments are unbalanced, he's really describing type differences. On the one hand, the person who he so admires, I don't mean this as a criticism, it's a wonderful book. It has a lot of good stuff in it. But even brilliant people sometimes miss what's going on in their own feelings and statements. And that's why we have the courage to make statements so that others can spot problems and bring them to our attention and we can, progress. Uh, Trust me, it takes more than a little bit of courage for me to sit here and talk publicly about my thoughts and ideas because there's obviously huge holes in my education, huge holes in my capacity for logic, and an awful lot of other stuff that you could spend a lifetime pointing out. Um, but I just feel that I have something to offer that is peculiar because my life and circumstances have been peculiar. So I have to bring me to the table and put my 2 cents, me, on the table. And if everybody brings themselves to the table, there'll be enough on the table for us to get by. We don't really know whose 2 cents will turn out to be the critical 2 cents, but that's not really a problem. Just keep bringing your 2 cents to the table and don't worry about it. So, you know, part of what happened is I'm seeing something that I don't think he sees about his view, and they also teach me something about my view. So this person he's describing is pretty much a person who's intuitive, and the person that he's describing as he uses a lot of quality terms. The person whose attachments are balanced. He says this person has trust. He is relatively internally free. Oh, you know what? I'm going to look at the camera on top of the computer in the center instead of at the picture because that makes me look sideways. Okay, a person who has the capacity to be moved, to express, to experience emotions, to access his deeper self, and whose life is heightened, enriched, and enlarged, all of which starts with his experience of awe and his acceptance of fear and wonder, both fear and wonder, and other wholesome developmental experiences. Well, you know, that's wonderful. That's a great description of the kind of childhood that lies behind a lot of people who are functioning in life with uh, just some really, wonderful things going on in their lives, and who we'd all like to have more of in the world. But essentially, this is more likely to be a person who's intuitive, and intuitives are only a part of the population. Um, the other part of the population is more oriented towards particular facts, toward when they perceive particular facts rather than how the facts might go together. Intuitives see how the facts might go together. So both offer something. What he's describing as a person whose attachments are balanced is really almost always a person who is an intuitive or who certainly has been raised by intuitives. And so it just seems to me that there's a type bias built into what he's talking about. And that told me, well, wait a minute. There might be a type bias built into me talking about all. Perhaps different types of people experience, by types, I mean different psychological types, people with different highly developed psychological skills. So that it might be the case that different psychological types of people experience all differently. And I said to myself, IDK, I don't know. And I think I ought to know. I think that's something, even if I can't gain a definite handle on, I should be looking at. So I will start to do that, and I will come back to you with more on that at a later time. So that was really the wonderful thing that happened to me today. In reading, I saw a type bias, it seems to me, in his description of this one kind of person whose attention is more balanced, uh, and that helped me see the possibility of a type bias in my description of the experience of awe. Maybe described all the way I experience it, but not everybody experiences it that way. So I'm going to keep working on that, and I'll get back to you. And tomorrow we're going to talk more about this book. There's really a lot of good stuff in here. Um, and uh, so I'm going to quit there for today. Thank you. See you tomorrow. Bye bye.